Okay, it is April 15th, 2016, and this video is showing some of the techniques I've been using to try to get a really good Firefox capture from my Laserdisc. So, some of you may be aware that Firefox is kind of different from other Laserdisc games because it continually skips. I think every 3 seconds or so it skips to a new scene, maybe even more frequent, and the only game I know of that skips more often than that is Freedom Fighter. So the problem with the problem that gets created because of Firefox's incessant skipping is when you try to make a capture of the Laserdisc, it's pretty easy for the audio to not be quite in sync with the video, and normally for most Laserdisc games this doesn't matter because it's close enough and a human's never going to notice. But when you're skipping every 3 seconds, then if the audio's off even a little bit, you're going to hear like pops every time it skips, because you're going to hear a little tiny bit of audio from the wrong clip. So it's going to be very distracting. And up until now, I've kind of avoided solving this problem because it just seemed impossible and too hard. But now that Dexter's ready to ship, and I'm trying to come up with a really good commercial product here, I've decided it's time to master the technique of getting the audio lined up really good with the video. So here's what I've come up with. What you see right here is the audio from a capture of Firefox using my LDV 2600 Laserdisc player, which I've used for years, and it's not the best Laserdisc player, but it's pretty convenient and it does pretty good. So that's why I used it in this case. So where do I want to start when looking at audio sync problems? Well, at the end of the attract mode, there's kind of a spot where in one clip there's audio playing, and in another clip it's silent, which is right around here. Yeah, at the end of the attract mode it goes silent here, but then it switches to another scene and plays like the sound of the plane zooming off into the distance, and then it goes silent again. And then here's where the actual game kind of starts. It makes kind of a sound. So I'm going to focus right around here. Zoom into this guy, because I know that this is where a transition happens. One clip ends here, another clip starts right here. So this is a pretty easy thing for me to see. So the first problem I ran into was, well, how do I know where the field actually starts? I can kind of guess, and but that quickly became overwhelming. So what I did was I wrote a little program to generate kind of a fake audio track that does a blip every time the field starts. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that in right now, and you can see this. Assuming I did this audio track correctly, this is going to make my job a lot easier. So it zoomed me out again. Let me zoom back in. So I'm going to zoom in right around here, and as I zoom in, you can see that on the second audio track there's kind of lines. Yeah, there's a line every time the field starts. So you can see that the field starts here, a field starts here, and the audio starts here a little bit before the audio starts, a little bit before the field. So yeah, so here's where the field starts, here's where the audio starts. So my first instinct when I saw this was, oh, my audio is off by, I don't know, this much, because it should start right over here, but it starts right over here. However, after messing around with trying to get it in sync using that method, I determined that that wasn't actually necessarily true, because when they made the Laserdisc, they probably didn't have very fancy equipment to do a very, very super accurate job, so I can't really assume that the audio is going to start exactly where the field starts. In fact, it's probably reasonable to assume that it's going to be off a little bit. But how do I tell how much off it is? This is where I was almost afraid to give up, because it just seemed impossible. I'm like, I don't know where the audio actually starts on the disc. But thanks to smart people, including Warren Andrus, they gave me the idea that instead of capturing left and right audio tracks, I could actually capture the video signal in one of the audio tracks, in one of the audio channels, and then, you know, one of the audio channels in the other audio channel. If that makes sense. Well, let me just show you. So that's exactly what I did. So here's where I captured the video and the audio. So I was kind of using my sound card as like a primitive analog to digital converter. So let me zoom out a little bit more so you can kind of see what I'm looking at here. So I don't know if you can tell, but this is the same area of the disc that I'm looking at over here. This is the very end of the track mode where it does this burst of sound and then it's silent and then the game starts right here. So and you can kind of see, even though this video signal's, I think it's actually AC coupled, so it's kind of deceptive because it doesn't really match what when I say AC coupled, I mean that the sound card or whatever is trying to sample this is going to try to keep the voltage at 0, and anytime the voltage, like a video signal's voltage may swing back and forth between negative or positive, or it may stay positive the whole time and go between like 0.3 and 1 volt, for example. But the audio card is going to try to compensate for that, and it's going to try to keep the wave kind of centered. So that's why you see up here, for example, that's why you see it start high and then slope down. It's because the audio, and you can see it start low and slope high. It's because the sound card's trying to keep it centered, which is actually not what I want, but I can work with it here. Okay, so let's zoom in at the very beginning of here and see if we can see. Okay. So I don't know if you've looked on my blog or studied video signals. I have some entries in my blog about what a video signal looks like, an NTSC signal. And basically, at the beginning of each field, there's going to be a big drop, and then there's going to be a big drop and kind of a repeatable or recognizable pattern. It's called the V blank area, the V sync. And then there's going to be a color burst, and I actually, yeah, I'm pretty sure the color burst comes after V-sync. I'm almost positive, but the color burst is going to kind of be recognizable, and then it's going to display, or it's going to have 262.5 horizontal lines, and each horizontal line has a recognizable beginning, which is called the H-sync pulse. And it's going to be a drop in voltage. So you can see here, 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 that's V-sync. I mean, it's pretty easy to recognize. And this up here is most likely the color burst. I'm almost positive. And here, this is most likely going to be just a black or almost black field. And here is going to be some, you know, a non-black field. Something's going to be happening on the screen. So you can see that the audio that's supposed to line up to this field is actually starting a little bit early. So this is really helpful because I can zoom in on this audio. In fact, let me zoom in a little bit more. There we go. Here's the V-sync area. Let me go back to my... Here's a blog post I had. This shows I'm going from bottom fields to top field? Or... no, I think this is top field going to bottom field. And if you look closely, what it does is each line is a certain length. It's actually 63 microseconds. So here's a line, here's a line, here's a line, here's line 262. And then when VSync starts, or sorry, when the next V blank starts, the lines are suddenly going to get half as long, or the lines are going to have an extra pulse in the middle of them. So here's the H sync pulse, but then right in the middle of this line 263 there's another pulse. So basically the pulses suddenly occur twice as often. So this is how the video decoder knows that it's the next VSync. Actually, VSync is actually technically this pulse right here. So there's these pre-equalization pulses here, then there's a VSync pulse, then there's post-equalization pulses, and then there's the rest of the V blank, which is non-visible area of the screen. So you can kind of count how many of these mini transitions there are. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 mini intervals, and then the VSync has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mini intervals, and then the post equalization pulse is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then a longer one. And this was generated from the Raspberry Pi's NTSC output, so it's not necessarily going to be super standard, so don't get too hung up on this. Okay, let me go back to this, because I want to show you how I was able to see the corresponding... Here, let me zoom in on here. There we go. So here what I have selected is the normal line, which is 63 microseconds. And remember how I said that it tries to keep the voltage in the middle? So that's why this wave is not looking similar to this. This is how it actually looks, but the sound card messes it up and makes it look more like this. So let's see. Here's a long pulse, and here's where the short pulses start. So let's count here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There, so we found the 7 mini intervals for the pre-equalization pulse, and here's VSync. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's definitely VSync. Here's the post-equalization, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6, the long. And here's the rest of VBlank. So I got really excited when I saw this because I thought, this is awesome. I know exactly where this field starts. It's right here. I mean, plus or minus, a few samples. Probably there. But actually, it's probably right there. That's probably exactly where it starts. With it, as far as, I sampled this at 192,000 hertz, which is, I think, as high as this sound card can go. So it's not super precise, but it's definitely enough. If you look at the audio, the audio's, I'm zoomed in so much on the audio here that it's not going to matter if I'm off by a few samples. Or I hope it's not going to matter, let's put it that way. So now that I have my cursor on the start of the field, I can kind of zoom out, and I can kind of see, okay, the field starts exactly right here. Assuming that the Laserdisc player that I sampled this on has the audio and video in sync. And the way I determined or tested whether the Laserdisc player had the audio and video in sync was I did this experiment on I did it on 3 different Laserdisc players. I did it on my CLD V2600, got a result like this. Then I did it on my Pioneer CLD59 Elite, which is a newer Laserdisc player, and the audio was off, and that made me really depressed, and I thought, oh, Each Laserdisc player does its own thing, it's different. But then, sorry, I did this experiment again on my Sony LDP 1450, and it matched very, very closely to the CLDV 2600. So that gave me confidence. That made me think, okay, the elite player is like doing some fancy post-processing schlop, but these older players don't have any of that fancy stuff, so they're probably in sync. And since they were consistent with each other, and since one of them is made by Sony and one of them is made by Pioneer, and they probably don't really share a lot of the same design inside, except for like the basic Laserdisc player design that all of them are going to have, I decided that gave me confidence to assume that this is probably a pretty accurate result of where the audio starts for this field. So I'm really excited about this. I'm going to now go back to my Laserdisc capture and try to adjust the audio so it matches up with what I'm seeing here. Then I'm going to create a Laserdisc image file, then I'm going to run it on Dexter and test the Firefox attract mode and see if I hear any popping or obvious flaws in the audio synchronization. And I'm not saying that it's going to be perfect, because I think that even on the original game there's probably some slight popping and artifacts. So I'm not expecting it to be perfect, but I'm expecting it to be close enough that it's not super distracting if you're not really looking for it. If you're just trying to play a game, you're probably not going to get too distracted by it, because otherwise people wouldn't have been able to tolerate this game in the arcades. Not that they got to play it in the arcades that much. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.